She didn't realize he was going to turn the tables on her. The wedding was right out of a pornographic novel. Fairy tale Jessica Witman, the ideal photo beside her. Southern Belle stood under a canopy of gentle golden lights, her ivory gown flowing like waves of silk. Malik, a self-made businessman, grinned proudly, having won the heart of a lady who seemed to adore him. Jessica's family selected the intimate yet elegant venue for the ceremony, which was held at a posh vineyard just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. It was attended by carefully chosen guests who sipped pricey champagne and exchanged polite smiles, but not all of the guests in Jessica's circle were grinning. Some, particularly the older ones, watched with forced politeness, their true feelings concealed behind well-practiced expressions. Jessica appeared indifferent as she stood by Malik's side, holding his hand tightly, her eyes gleaming with admiration. Online, she was an even greater champion for their love. Love sees no race. It's 2023, and we're breaking barriers together. When she shared this on Instagram a week after their Malibu honeymoon, people loved their story. Overnight, Jessica rose to prominence as an influencer, hailed for her audacity and defiance of social norms. Malik didn't care as much about the attention he received on social media, but he was content, or at least he believed that everything was well at home. Jessica made sure their modern two-story home in Brentwood, Tennessee, was immaculate, almost too perfect, and decorated it with a minimalist, almost sterile aesthetic, which stood in stark contrast to Malik's preference for warmth and personality. Nevertheless, he ignored it because he loved her strength of character. Even though Malik was more than capable, Jessica insisted on managing the finances. One evening while they were watching TV, he reached for the remote control and unintentionally knocked over a stack of mail. When he picked them up, he saw a thick legal envelope with Jessica's name on it. The sender was a law firm. He said, "Hey Jess, you got something from an attorney," and she gave it to her. Jessica's reaction was quick. Before he could even read the firm's name, her usual warm smile turned into something colder. "Oh, just some old family business," she said, slipping the envelope behind her back. Then, her bright expression returned, and she leaned in and kissed him on the cheek, saying, "There's nothing to worry about, baby." Malik dismissed it with a laugh, asking why he and his partner wouldn't have small secrets. At first, he didn't think anything was quite right because Jessica was private about her family affairs, so he didn't have any reason to doubt her. However, then the red flag began to appear. At first, it was small things. Jessica always had opinions about his clothing, not in the sweet, teasing way she used to, but rather in a way that felt sharp, like don't you think she'd say when he wore one of his favorite bold-colored button-ups, or maybe something more neutral would look better on you? Even if he doesn't always make the best business judgments, Malik is such a clever man, she would remark at dinner parties with a little chuckle. "HEK lucky to have me keep him in check," right? Malik would chuckle along with the crowd, pretending not to notice how the words stung. But it wasn't just words, it was the way she handled their friends. When he introduced her to people from his side of town, she was all smiles, but something was off. She didn't engage, she never tried to build real connections. And when they got home, she had a habit of brushing them off with a wave of her hand. "They're nice, babe, but I just don't have much in common with them," she'd say. Slowly, those friends stopped coming around. And then there was the money. Jessica insisted on handling their joint account. She framed it as a way to lighten his load, but somehow Malik found himself asking permission for things he had never thought twice about before. One evening, he wanted to transfer money for a business investment and noticed something strange in an account he didn't recognize with Jessica's name on it. He clicked on it, his heart thudding. It had over $300,000 in it. That wasn't the strange part. Jessica came from a wealthy family, but as he went through the transactions, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. All of the deposits had begun the month they were married, and not a single dollar had come from her or her family's accounts. Instead, it was all being transferred from their joint finances. Malik sat back in his chair and stared at the screen. He wanted to think it was an error because there was an explanation, but something inside of him knew this wasn't an accident. He didn't say anything that night because he needed to be certain, but in reality, he was scared of the response. Malik wasn't the kind of guy who trusted his wife, and he did believe in giving her the benefit of the doubt, but trust only works when it's reciprocal, and there was something about Jessica, about the way she carried herself, lately told him that trust was a one-way street. One evening, Jessica left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. Normally, he wouldn't think twice about it. But this time his eyes landed on an open email thread. The subject line made his stomach tighten. Finalizing the inheritance details, urgent. Malik's hands hovered over the keyboard. He knew better than to invade her privacy, but his gut told him that whatever was inside that email, he needed to see it. He clicked. The email was from a law firm, the same firm on that envelope he'd seen weeks ago. Per the conditions set forth in Mr. Witman's estate plan, your inheritance will be transferred in full upon the completion of the 3-year marriage term. We will need proof of continuity before the final disbursement. Malik's heart slammed against his ribs. His breathing slowed. 3 years. He scrolled further. Attached to the email was a folder titled Financial Projections. His fingers were ice cold as he opened it. Inside, he found a detailed document breaking down exactly how much money Jessica would be entitled to once the marriage term was met. $8 million, and below that, notes on an exit strategy, projected divorce timeline, Q3 of year 3, Alamon projections. None prenuptial agreement ensures financial separation upon divorce. Recommended strategy, gradual emotional distancing, documented irreconcilable differences favorably written to secure public sympathy. Malik's vision blurred. His mouth went dry. Jessica hadn't just planned to leave him. She had strategized every single part of it, from the narrative to the financials. He wasn't her husband. He was a business move, a stepping stone to her fortune. Then the worst part, at the bottom of the file was a section labeled Communications. It was a series of messages between Jessica and her older brother, Ethan Witman. Jessica, it's honestly disgusting how easy this is. He actually thinks I love him. Ethan, well, at least you don't have to sleep with him forever. 2 more years. Stay focused, Jessica. Oh, I'm focused. And when this is done, I never want to see his face again. Malik's body locked up. 2 years. That's how long he had left before she discarded him like trash, before she humiliated him, before she walked away richer than ever, while he was left with nothing but the pieces of his broken life. And she had no idea that he knew. Malik closed the laptop slowly, his hands trembling, his mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. How had he been so blind? How had he let himself fall for the illusion? Jessica had played him perfectly, and now she was in control of everything: his finances, his reputation, his future. He wanted to confront her, wanted to throw that laptop in her face, and demand answers. But then what she would lie, she would twist the truth, manipulate him, gaslight him into believing he was overreacting. No, he couldn't let her know what he had found. Not yet. The sound of running water stopped. A moment later, he heard the soft click of the bathroom door opening. Babe, Jessica called from the hallway. Where'd you go? Malik inhaled sharply, forcing his voice to stay. Even just checking emails. Her footsteps approached. Then, just like always, she slipped behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. She smelled like vanilla, an expensive soap. You work too much, she murmured, pressing a kiss to the back of his neck. His skin crawled. Malik turned, forcing a smile, just trying to keep up. Jessica studied his face, her blue eyes searching for something. You okay? You look a little tense. For a split second, he thought she knew, but then she smirked and ran a finger down his chest. You sure it's not just because I'm standing too close? She kissed him, then soft, sweet, the way she always did when she wanted something. Malik kissed her back, pretending everything was fine, pretending he was still the same man he'd been an hour ago before he knew the truth. Because if Jessica could lie for years, so could he. But the ACT wouldn't be easy. Over the next few weeks, Malik watched her differently. Every word, every smile, every touch. He analyzed it all. And what terrified him the most wasn't the deception, it was how good she was at it. Jessica moved through life, effortlessly weaving lies into every interaction. She played the role of the devoted wife so well no one would ever suspect the truth. She still posted about their love on social media, still held his hand in public, still called him my king when the cameras were rolling. And the worst part, she was patient. She never rushed things. She was willing to wait, to play the long game. That meant Malik had to do the same. But Jessica wasn't stupid. She sensed something was different. You're acting weird lately, she said one night, as they lay in bed, quieter, distant. Malik shrugged. Just a lot on my mind. She studied him in the dark, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his chest. Is it business? Yet Jessica was silent for a moment, then rolled on her side. You know, I'll always take care of you, right? He stared at the ceiling. Jessica didn't love him, but she sure as hell owned him, and if he wasn't careful, she'd make sure he never walked away. Malik knew one thing for sure: he had to get out. But he couldn't just leave, not yet. Jessica was too smart, too calculated. If she even suspected he was planning something, she tightened her grip. He had seen what she was capable of. He had to be patient. He had to be smarter than her. The first thing he did was regain control of his finances. It wasn't easy. Jessica had set up so many barriers, so many protections under the guise of looking out for him. However, Malik wasn't a fool. He had created a business out of nothing and knew how to transfer money without drawing attention to himself. He opened a separate bank account under a business alias and gradually began transferring small amounts over the course of weeks. Just enough to avoid detection, but not enough to raise suspicions. The second step was obtaining evidence that if Jessica had played the long game, so would he. He began recording screenshots, voice memos, and emails, and he installed a covert app on his phone that captured their conversations, preserving every backhanded comment and tiny slip in her flawless mask. The most dangerous part was that he needed a way out that wouldn't ruin him. Divorce wasn't an option yet, because if he filed first, Jessica would take charge of the story and use the public's sympathies against him. One evening, Jessica was watching as Malik shut down his laptop, but he wanted something more significant, something that would force her to run. Jessica crossed her arms and muttered, "You've changed lately," as she stood at the doorway of his office, expressing tension from work. Malik answered in a light tone, but Jessica tilted her head, studying him. His stomach tightened as he forced himself to look at her. "Why would I hide anything from my wife?" she asked, smiling, but it wasn't a genuine smile. Rather, it was the kind she used when she knew she was winning. "You know I hate secrets," she said, walking over and placing a hand on his shoulder. For the first time, Malik wondered if he was actually fooling her, or if she had understood all along that Malik's escape plan needed to go more quickly after she kissed his forehead for a moment too long. Every conversation seemed like a test now that Jessica was observing him too intently, and every inquiry was a trap. But he had one last strategy. He had stored the most incriminating piece of evidence for the ideal time. The email exchange between Jessica and her brother, in which she poked fun of him and outlined her plan, was printed out, copied, and forwarded to her lawyer, her family, and, most importantly, the media. Malik was waiting for her bag in the living room when Jessica woke up one morning to hundreds of missed calls. She hardly had time to open her mouth before her phone buzzed again, this time for her mother, her brother, the family lawyer. Malik's face became pale as she watched the flawless mask break. She muttered, "What did you do?" He let out a breath and felt lighter than he had in months. "I made your true self visible to the world." Jessica's mouth opened, but she didn't have a smart answer for once. She had worked for years to create the ideal image, but in one night, everything fell apart. Her own family turned against her, and the media turned against her. Under judicial scrutiny, the inheritance was frozen, and Malik left with all she believed she had stolen from him. His honor, liberty, and strength. Ignoring the indicators is the worst error you can make, since some individuals don't love you. Instead, they love what you can do for them. Trust deeds, not words. If you ever find yourself ensnared in someone's web, keep in mind that the only way to escape is to regain control before they tighten their hold. What would you do if you discovered that someone you loved was abusing you? Let's discuss it in the comments.